Hi, everybody, and welcome to Unmuzzled, a podcast, all things animals, all the time. I'm bringing my guest right in because we're going to have a lot to talk about. Dr. Vega, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Yes, and we have now seen each other a few times at animal events across the city. The first one, I believe, being here right by my house in Arlington Heights. So I've had the pleasure of meeting you and chatting and connecting via email, and I'm so interested in everything you've done because I love when people take a passion and turn it into a business, because then you never work a day in your life, right?
It's so true, and then sometimes you see those things where, you say, I can't work a 40-hour-a-week job. I choose to work a 160-hour-a-week self-employed job, right? And it's very true, right? Because you get to do things on your time, on your schedule. And like you said earlier, you have a vision, right? And that vision can only be executed by the person that sees the vision, theoretically, right? So you go out and you do what you love, and you never have to work a day in your life. And I do believe that. As you know, we've seen each other at many functions. We've met IRL. We've also met through the screen. We've met at events both as vendors or as I had to attend got to attend the Live Like Rue 10th anniversary, which was so fun. So we've seen each other in so many different aspects, and that's what I love is that vet med in general or animals in general, right? Whether it's shelter work, rescue work, the medicine portion, the surgical portion, the rescue portion, right? There's so much, or even just the therapy portion, right? Therapy animals, all of that. It gives us the opportunity to be in these rooms, because if there's one thing that we have in connection, Sarah, is that we're both in the rooms, right? Where these conversations are happening, and you've been in the room longer, which I think is awesome. So me coming into this room as a newbie, or if you will, I'm grateful to have people like you that are like, hey, you're new to this space. Come under my wing, right? Welcome. This is how it's done. This is how we do it. Yeah, first of all, welcome, and then this is how we do it, right? And I think that's one of the greatest things about people that work with animals in any capacity tend to be just kind people in general. And that's another thing I really appreciate. There was a Mark Twain quote. I think it was Mark Twain, and he said, I am not weary of people who do not like my dog, but I am weary of people that my dog does not like. And I think it was Mark. I want to say it was Mark Twain.
Yes. Yeah. It was true, though. It doesn't even matter who said it. It's an amazing quote.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, too, because I've been in this dog community, for a while now, it has changed. And I talk a lot about this when I have guests, especially local Chicagoland guests on this podcast. Mm-hmm. When I first started at, volunteering at animal control and helping, with transfers out of animal control to rescues and evaluating dogs, there was a lot of, petty girl things and then once I found to get tunnel vision and focus on what I was doing, which eventually became, Live Like Rue was like my passion.
Yeah.
It changed. And even as the women, in these scenarios grew up and got older and realized hey, we're better together. We all now have this amazing bond. And now to welcome somebody like you in, which is rare to have a man come into the fold with us. It's nice to kind of mix it up. It's so awesome. And just in general, you're an asset, I know, for people like Imelda and Rachel, running these low cost clinics and low cost food drives and getting for people. So it's so nice to have somebody like you. It's actually a breath of fresh air, I like to say. But before we get into your business and how this came to be, just tell me about growing up. I feel like all of us that are here obviously have a passion for animals.
Yeah. And I love everyone's story, because that's another great thing, right? Is that everybody's, intro story or awakening, right? Everybody's is so different, and so, so unique. It's so fun. And for me, my story starts, many moons ago. We typically didn't have pets. Actually, we just couldn't afford it. We just couldn't afford to have pets. And my mother actually worked in the administration at Brookfield Zoo when I was very young. Worked at the administration of Brookfield Zoo, and that's actually where I spent all of my summers, all of my off days from school. Because also we couldn't afford childcare either, right? So this was still back in the days when you can go to work with your mom, right? You can't do that anymore. But when you could could go to work with your parents, right? And I was fortunate enough to basically be, not raised, but kept after by the zookeepers, right? So I got to hang out behind the scenes. I got to see things and not treatments or medical stuff, but I got to see husbandry, right? Taking care of them and, making sure the enclosure is clean and why that's important, right? Why husbandry is important. And from there, I actually got to see the first neurosurgery or brain surgery ever done on a gorilla was done at Brookfield Zoo, and I was there in the theater, and I got to watch behind the screen. I was 8 years old, actually. It was a lowland gorilla named Chicory. She was one of the first gorillas over at Brookfield Zoo. And the neurosurgeon that did that surgery, I was telling my awakening story in my clinical year of vet school to the doctor, and she said, "That's my colleague." And I said, "Yeah, it's very small." And I was like, "Wow, it's a small world too. It is this wonderful world of animals, but or animal rescue, if you will. But it's also a very small world too. So that was, a really cool full circle. And from there, that was where my love developed. And I remember going after her surgery and just watching her through the enclosure, right? These were the plastic or the tempered glass, right? So, you're very close to them. And, I remember seeing that giant scar, right? And it was over my summer break. So I spent every day there. And then I've noticed, every month it would get less and less and less. And then the scar was gone, right? And, that's fascinating for an 8-year-old, right? I would always think, does it hurt? What are you guys doing so that she's not in pain? What are you doing for this? What are you doing for that? I remember I'd get so upset because I just wanted to go in there and say, "Are you okay?" But it is what it is. But that's where my awakening happened, and from there, we'll get to this, but my mother had a big role to play in it, and also from the perspective of helping people, because we're going to get into eventually here how indirectly helping animals we help people, or vice versa. By helping people, we help animals. And she really instilled both of those in me. One is to love and care for and steward animals, right, from a wildlife standpoint, right? Your boundaries of, cats, your domestic versus your livestock versus your wildlife, right? And we treat them and respect them in different ways, and they have their different, places and all of that. But above all, she taught me how to help people and to want to help people. And that is why I do what I do, because I'm very much not your average veterinarian, I guess, in the sense that, I do love my patients, but I love their owners just as much as I love my patients. And I figured out a way to help people. I figured out the way is that through helping this person's animal, I am helping them. So I'm almost filling my bucket twice, and it's really, I'm very privileged and very blessed to be in a field where I just constantly am filling my bucket, even when it looks like I'm pouring out and helping whatever organization it is. It's coming back to me, and not in a karma standpoint, but it's very fulfilling to be of service, right? And servant leadership and things like that. And that's how I run, that's how I run Concierge Companions. I sit on several boards of directors. That's how I govern and steward the organizations. And that's really my background for both animals and for helping people in general, which we are animals at the end of the day, right? So we are just two-legged mammals, right? So there's that part too.
Yeah, I do think that's an important point, because even with my pet care business, and with Rue, you initially, your passion is to help animals, but you really are helping the humans more so, and you're communicating obviously more with the humans. So I think too, I was reading, you did what I did, which you got sick of corporate America, you got sick of the BS, and you said,
"Yeah,
I am going to pave my way and grasp my future," and you took the leap. And it's really effing scary. It is scary.
It's very scary, because you go through these moments where you're like, "Oh, bleep, 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 what have I done?" And then you have these really, magnanimous moments, right, where you say, this happened because of me, right? And that's great too. And yeah, it was really taking that leap of faith of where, I don't want to necessarily, let me put it this way. Corporate has its place, right? Corporate anything, right? Target, right? Or Target versus Amazon versus your mom and pop bookstore, right? Corporates do have their place. The thing is, what I found is that I need the flexibility. I'm very much a creature of flexibility. I want to be able to do things always the right way, but my way. I don't want to be told when to go to lunch. I don't want to be told, that I have to stay late or come in early, right? If I do those things, it's because I choose to do them. And there's days with Concierge Companions Vet Med where I don't have anything in the schedule after 1, and I say, you know what? Let's go home. Or there's days where I say, you know what? I want to make some, I want to make our KPIs today. Let's stay open and let's, power through, right? And we have that ability, and I have that flexibility to say when I want to do it. And that's really what I wanted. And what you get, from your typical run of the mill W-2 jobs, right? For lack of a better term, right? A W-2 job is more rigid, but it does have its place. There are people that want to clock in and clock out and just do that, and that's okay too. But then there's people like us, right, that exist that want, so much more, but we also want to put in the work to get it. But we also we can help more, right? And I felt as I walked out of my corporate environment, I was helping people in that corporate environment, but I knew I could help more people outside of that environment. And that's why I chose to leave and found Concierge Companions 6 months after graduating vet school, might I add. And the interim of there also continue stewarding and governing, right? And I was grateful enough to be able to sit on the board of MCP, and that's how, you and I originally got connected, was through those rooms. I also sit on the board for Blessings in a Backpack as well on their associate board. They provide meals for children on weekend who otherwise rely on school for food, right? And there's no school on Saturday and Sunday. So they do a great job, and I'm very proud to help steward that organization. And then, of course, NAMV, right, which you may be familiar with as well in the veterinary field, is Not One More Vet. We're in our race around the world at the moment, so our type of gala for the season. So check out my link, guys, and sign up for the race because, we're counting steps, and it's awesome. So, and you get to help peers, right? And we get to talk about those other parts of the really cool thing about NAMB, right? And this stigma around suicide, right? The stigma around mental health, right? This what we do, Sarah, in our field, you too, what we do, right, has a lot to do with mental health too. People don't realize that their pet's well-being I should say, people don't realize that a person's pet affects their mental health. They writhe, they worry for their pet, they care for, as they should, right? One thing I like to tell people when they're having a bad day in the hospital or even here at Concierge is, sometimes we're meeting people on the worst day of their life, right? They may have Googled whatever their dog was going through or whatever, but they have no idea what's going on, right? And they're relying heavily on us to get them those answers. And part of the job is doing that and getting those answers for the people, even if they're not the answer we want to hear. I still take pride in that I got you the answer, right? And I know it still hurts what the answer is, but at least you know what the answer is, and there's no what if or what if we did that, what if we did that, right? Also, I am also free from the confines of key performance indicators. I set my KPIs, which means if I want to sponsor something, then I'm going to sponsor it. And that's all there is to it. I don't have to get approval from this department to do this outreach event, to get this material, to get this. I remember one time, as you might know, as a creator, we post content at different times, right? And we schedule content to be posted at different times. You can do that with a creator account. And I remember being approached at work on my lunch break and being told, hey, corporate's noticing that you're posting at 11 a.m. or that you're posting at noon or you're posting during work hours. And first of all, thank you for following and thank you for being so thorough with your following. But second of all, those are all scheduled. I did those weeks in advance. Those are just posting because those are when my followers are active. And I have nothing. I'm literally in a surgery right now. I'm not posting anything. And it just got to the point where I was like, wow, if I'm that under the needle, right? That under the microscope where I can't even make a post or, things have to be done a certain way from a protocol perspective, right? And then, the cool thing about medicine is that there's different ways to do it. One of my favorite quotes is, if you put 3 veterinarians in a room and ask them a question, you'll get 5 answers. And it's true because we all have a different way of doing it, and it's all the right way. It's just a matter of what way is it. And that's one of the greatest things too.
Yeah, I love that. So let's back up a little because I want to go over what is Concierge Companions. This is important because there's different things that you do, and they're all equally important. But, you know, obviously having a mobile vet, a concierge vet nowadays is so necessary for a variety of reasons. You
Yeah.
can go where vets aren't prevalent. You can go to neighborhoods that need a vet. You can also go to homes where the pet does not enjoy the vet. So
Yeah.
kind of tell me, what is this business and what have you built it around? What's important?
Yes. Concierge Companions Vet Med is my brainchild. I had this idea before I even got on the plane to head to vet school. This was my 5-year plan. And, you know, what we are is a full service hospital, full service concierge veterinary hospital. We have a 16-foot Mercedes Sprinter van that's fully outfitted into a treatment room. We're capable of radiology, as you can see, x-ray, ultrasound, anesthesia, our lab material in the back. So you see our SediVue, our ProCyte, our Catalyst. So we're able to run full blood work. And I mean, while we don't run on emergencies, and I didn't design us to be an emergency, we are theoretically a field hospital. And I've been approached a couple times to be, and have been told, hey, we need a hospital dispatch. Can you do it? We're not set for the moment. But that was my goal, was to bring the veterinarian to you. I want my patients to have a good experience, but I also want people to have convenience. I personally myself am a creature of convenience. I pay the extra $10 for the $5 Big Mac to be delivered to my door. And I know, and hey, there are people there is a niche for that, and that's what I want to do is, and not the convenience pay part of it, but the convenience of, hey, my dog is sick. I can't tell you how many times where I've worked at a downtown clinic, and this dog has bloat, and it's walking from the car to the hospital. That's a city block, which is not a suburban block. A city block is way more, you know. So I wanted to build it around that, and I wanted to build it around being both patient and human centric, in the sense that that name concierge, right? I'm a concierge to my clients, but I'm also a concierge to my patients, right? As needed, within reason, obviously. But that was the goal, is that if I'm coming to your house and doing an exam, how dare I then send you somewhere for blood work? How dare I then send you somewhere for x-rays? How dare I then send you somewhere for something else? In that case, you should have just had your exam done at that facility. So I wanted to make sure that we were a one-stop shop for our patients. So as you saw through the video or through the media content, we're fully equipped to handle just about any a general practice scenario, even a couple of emergency types of scenarios. We're fully equipped with oxygen to provide oxygen supplementation, to provide anesthesia, to induce anesthesia. We just had our dental equipment installed, so we're going to be running dentals as well out of the mobile unit. Yeah, so the goal was a one-stop. When I use the term, I also think that clinic, hospital get misused sometimes. And my goal was to correct that verbiage and actually build a hospital, right? It's not a hospital if you can't do your blood work, right? It's more of a clinic in that case, right? You know, again, if you have to go somewhere else for an x-ray, somewhere else for this. And that's what I wanted, was to be able to get everything done for that owner right then and get them the answers they need right then and there. It can be difficult sometimes in general practice where maybe they can't afford same-day blood work, so I have to send it out, right? But I hate doing that sometimes because I need the answer now. I don't need it tomorrow. And it's not going to matter tomorrow in some cases, so I need it now. And that's why one of the ways I built in these features, I also wanted to make sure that I made us sustainable and able to scale. And what that looked like was investing appropriately, running capital campaigns, but also scaling appropriately. At the influx, at the beginning, there was an influx, but the model would have collapsed if I would have just taken in 100 clients all at once as one veterinarian with one technician. So we had to scale back, trickle in clients, and now we're at a point where we'll be scaling full time in July, actually. So we're in the middle of we've gone from part-time. Q1 of this year has been amazing, so that's great too. That's allowing us to scale because we want to bring this to more people. And again, you know, think about, and this is how I position it to clients too, is, you know, I want to do blood work for this reason, right? Fluffy isn't feeling well. They haven't eaten in a few days, and I think we should do some blood work so to make sure that the organs haven't sustained any damage. Let me draw the blood. 17 minutes. 17 minutes in that red machine, and I have your answers. 17 minutes in that yellow machine, and we have your urinalysis, right? None of this sending to the lab and waiting and all of that. Now, of course, the lab has its place. Don't get me wrong. With more invasive tests, more extensive testing, the lab is very necessary. But the job, my goal again was to be a one-stop shop for the client and for the patient, and to provide them with a concierge service, right? Nothing more screams concierge than you not leaving your house, right? And don't get me wrong, there's some of my fun competitors out there that'll give you a glass of wine, right, when you go in. But some of us, and don't get me wrong, I love you so much, Dr. Remness. But some of us, right, rather than me serving you a glass of wine, how about you just go in your kitchen and open the one you want while I tend to Fluffy in the living room?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
there's always room to expand to the market.
Yeah, and my goal, I've reached my 5-year plan already. This was the end of it from when I started vet school. But the next 5-year plan is a fleet of these mobile units, right? Because I don't want to drive to the suburbs. I want to get a call and say, hey, I have a unit in your area. We'll be right there, right? Not I've got to drive over there, right? The goal is to have, I'm working with the manufacturer right now to outfit a surgical unit where instead of a treatment room that you saw in your photo, there's surgical tables instead. There's autoclaves instead. So instead of the table, there would be surgical tables instead. So we would be able to just have this unit pull up for medicine things and the other unit pull up for surgeries. Because again, I want to be able to take this to the community. I don't know if you're familiar with the night ministry.
Yes.
So guess who's heading out there to the encampment? Guess who got asked to go out there? So again, that's why I built this unit, was to take the hospital to the patient, and to whatever patient that looks like, whatever person that looks like. And I know we get confused sometimes, and that's my fault. Or we get confused with concierge and implying that it's an elevated service. And don't get me wrong, we do provide an elevated service. However, I am not a believer in exclusion in any way. I do not like the word. I do not like the practice of excluding people from things. So we're not exclusionary, and that's why we've incorporated systems like Cherry, Care Credit, right? These additional, so people have additional options of access to care. Now, can I get to everybody? Not necessarily, but I'm going to try to get to as many people as I can. And again, not to turn the revenue, to turn the dial, but to keep doing what I love. And this is what I love doing, is helping people and helping animals. Now, do I need to eat? Yes, I need to eat. This thing needs gas and propane and all of that, right? So, but realistically, another thing that I want to say when it comes to businesses, both in and out of the vet world or the veterinary world, when you maximize profits, you have no choice but to sacrifice quality. You have no choice. They cannot grow together. They are inverse of one another. So it was never my goal to maximize profits. This is a great conversation I have with our COO all the time, who is my husband, Daniel. These are great conversations, right? Because I don't want to maximize profits, because if I do that, I will have to cut care and access. And I don't want, that's not why I wanted to do this. So that's not a road I'm going to go down. But we have this great balance, right? Or this great dichotomy of, we have our, there's appointment one, I am looking at the lake. I'm on Lakeshore Drive in somebody's penthouse. The next appointment, I'm in South Shore, right? And so what? They have pets too. They need care too. And we work with people the best we can. I have a great practice manager, Amanda, who does the legwork of trying to find out how we can get people, either we make it affordable, either we make it to that person's range, or, we find a way to get them the resources they need, because I'm not going to leave anybody behind. And I know that there's been this concept recently in veterinary medicine, or this word going around, of pricing people out. So I worry about that. I do. Do I know if that's going on? I don't know. I haven't sat down to look at the labor statistics, and I will look at the labor statistics, because that will tell you what's really happening. I'm not just going to listen to what I hear. But I want to make sure that if that's happening, I either do my best to not to perpetuate it, or to do something about it, right? And try to stop it. That's another reason why I've taken, if we want change, and veterinarians will tend to think that, change is at the patient level. No, I took it to the rooms. I took it to the boardrooms, and I'm going to get the change. Will it happen in my lifetime? Maybe not necessarily, but we're going to keep moving the ball along. And that's what I wanted to be a part of. I want to be a part of the movement itself. to get more care, to get quality care, all of that. I know it's possible, and that's why I put as much work in, because I know this is possible, and that's what keeps me going. And yes, people will say, well, it's only been a year. Wait till you've been a vet for 10 years and you hate your job. Or wait till you've been doing this for 30 years and you hate your job. I'm not that type of person. Again, this is my second career. I went to vet school at 34 and graduated at 38. Thank you. Your typical veterinarian at graduation is around 24-ish, 25-ish, and nothing wrong with that, by the way. But I say that to say, when you're 24, 25, you have a lot of time to learn, to make mistakes, to do things like that. When you're a second career or anything, you are a little bit behind of the game, and you need to catch up, which is why. So I do appreciate, and I do appreciate, and I'm very proud of the work I've done, but I'm not a superstar. All of this was meticulous planning that is falling into place the way I wanted it to. But I want to make it, known that, anybody can do it. I'll never forget my colleague Jill, 52, okay? I was 34 and she was 52. And here we go, arriving as first day students in our first anatomy class. And now look at us, right? And it's so cool and so awesome that we all come from these different demographics. And, but I do think that, I do have a different thought process, and that it's not a traditional veterinary thought process, but I'm also not a traditional veterinarian or a traditional vet student. So there you go with there goes that untraditional portion.
Yeah. And I just wanted to mention, as we close it out, because this part is important, your give back, through MCP, through people that really need it. That partnership is so valuable. And, we're going to talk about Live Like Rue eventually too, and possibly working on some things. That for you is also important, to get into the communities and help where people don't have resources. And it is between them being able to get help with vetting and or surrendering their pet, and MCP is really like at the forefront of that, like trying to help owners keep that. But that part is so important to you.
It is very important. The human, and I am first and foremost will always introduce myself as a guardian of the human animal bond. I'm sorry, that's not true. My favorite word is sentinel to use. So I always say I'm a sentinel of the human animal bond, because realistically, that's what matters the most important to me, is that bond is not broken. And I have these conversations in appointments all the time where, daughter, may think that mom feeding the dog home cooked, chicken and rice and carrots and, all of this stuff is killing the dog. Right. But no, I talk to the both of them in the room, and I tell them, this is how your mother bonds with this animal. Okay. Who am I? Who are you? Who are any of us to tell her how to bond with her animal? Well, Dr. Vega, it's raising his cholesterol. Well, so is the cheeseburger I'm eating. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Right. We get stuck on these longevity things. We get stuck on timing. And realistically, what it comes down to is the human animal bond. If you feeding your animal raw steaks because you think it's a wolf, you know what? We can talk about ways to come together, and let's talk about, okay, you want to feed that? Let's talk about what we can incorporate to balance it from a calcium standpoint, a phosphorus standpoint, a magnesium standpoint. What supplements can we put in there, right? I try to do it that way. I don't ever want to, how people husband their animals or provide husbandry to their animals is a form of their culture. It was how they were raised. It's how they view animals. And far be it for me to tell, that's the one thing, that's my biggest pet peeve is, I am a doctor. I am not, that doesn't mean that I tell you how to take care of your animal, right? That is 100% on you as the owner or guardian of that pet. Who am I to say you're doing it wrong? From a medicine standpoint, yes, I will argue with Dr. Google all day. However, I'm not going to argue with, this, 70-year-old lady who literally the highlight of her day is cooking for her pet. Okay. Who am I to interrupt that? And, but we can talk about ways to balance it, right? And that's where supplements come in and things like that, where I keep it very neutral because, again, as you can see, just looking at me, I am a diverse person. And therefore, I know diversity very well. And that people come not just the way they look, talk, and all that, but the way they behave, the way they husbandry, the way they provide husbandry also goes to culture and how people view the world, view themselves, view all of that. And I take that very seriously on being a steward and keeping them together as MCP does, right? Because who else was going to stand outside of animal care and control and be like, hey, why are you dropping off your dog? Oh, you can't afford food? That's simple. We'll give you food, right? Or, when that time comes, when I found out that people, I did not know this actually. I did not know that people take their animals to Chicago Animal Care and Control simply to be euthanized, even when they do need to be euthanized, but they can't afford the procedure. And that pet has to pass away without their owner. And I haven't decided how I want to feel about it yet, so I'm not going to make a comment just yet because I understand CACC's policies. I understand the animal welfare aspect. I understand the public health aspect of just having people in an animal facility. So I do get it. But there has to be a middle ground. But at least for now, when you and I talked about, potentially Live Like Rue end of life care, when we talked about MCP right, things like that, I will do, I'm not going to commit to say I will do it, but things like that, I will find a way. There has to be a way to keep this pet and this human together while this pet transitions. There has to be a way. And if all you're going to tell me is there's no way, well, then I'm going to find the way then. And that's why I do what I do. A lot of what I'm doing, sitting on these boards and working through stewardship and governance, is trying to find a way to get it done and move the needle, even if it's just an inch, move it just a little bit forward. Because people won't believe change is possible until they see it. And that's why some of this stuff comes out of my pocket, because I say, you know what? If you need to see it to believe it, well, then see it, you believe it, that was my investment. The return on the investment is now we have a program, right? So, that's just but also you have to be balanced with it, right? I'm very fortunate that I'm a 2-income household. I can do things like that. So I also respect the fact that there's plenty of people that want to do what we do, but just can't at the moment. And I would tell those people, just keep working at it or try to make change any way you can. And it's fulfilling.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be some huge scale thing.
Yeah.
That's so true. You are an asset to Chicagoland, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate that.
It looks like I only had to ask like 3 questions because you already knew. Like you knew exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah, because this is so, it's so necessary. And, anybody who's willing to, as you know, Sarah, right, in the nonprofit world, if you're willing to listen, we're willing to talk. Yeah.
Dr. Vega, everybody, check him out. You'll see him at events if you come around. He's amazing and he's great to talk to. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And we'll see you at Tales on Trails, Morton Arboretum, May 3rd, Sunday. All
yes.
Right.
Dr. Vega, everybody, again, here's the website. If you're interested, concierge vetting in general has been, blowing up over the past few years. In fact, one of my favorite vets at Boulevard Vet, which is one of our partner vets as well, went and did her own thing in Nashville, has been amazingly successful. So, this is an important thing going on right now, especially for people that have dogs that really hate the vet or, have some kind of situation where you can't get to the vet. Like that bloat example was, a perfect example of somebody needing vetting very quickly and doesn't have time to get to the vet, which, wow. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Vega. I will see you guys soon. Have a great night. Bye-bye. Oh, boy.